Let's go, folks. Time for the Gibby Show.
How you doing, baseball fans, and welcome to a special edition of the Gibby Show presented by Miller Lite, the official beer of Major League Baseball and the Gibby Show. I'm John Arezzi with Gibby, now a member of the Mets coaching staff. We are finishing up the month covering the Jays until the end of December. In today's show, we will focus on the biggest story in baseball. That is Shohei Ohtani signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and unfortunately, the Blue Jays missing out on that free agent who is signing a massive $700 million deal, and how the Jays now need to pivot from Ohtani, who's now a member of the Dodgers. We will bring on Baseball Insider covering the Blue Jays every day. Respected journalist Keegan Matheson will join us for the leadoff. We'll also have another best of Gabbin with Gibby. This time we're going to focus on that amazing 2015 team, the run-up, and it's going to be quite interesting to see and go back on the archives and see Gibby's interaction and discussion about that 2015 team, including the guy that hit that bat flip heard around the world. So you'll enjoy that as well. And inspired by our friends at Miller Lite, we will toast and roast, or roast and toast someone in baseball. On today's leadoff, our coverage will focus on the biggest contract in the history of professional sports and how the signing of Shohei Ohtani will impact not only the game of baseball, but how the signing affects the Toronto Blue Jays in 2024 and beyond. It's a pleasure to welcome back to the Gibby Show one of the most respected baseball journalists out there in the game since 2019. He's been the full-time Toronto Blue Jays journalist, beat reporter for MLB.com. If you want to get the inside story on anything Toronto Blue Jays, there's only one guy to go to, and he's here with us today. It's our pleasure to welcome back Keegan Matheson to the Gibby Show. Keegan, welcome back.
Hey, thank you, John, for having me. How are you guys doing now?
We're hanging in. I know we talked a little bit offline that the baseball winter meetings were really unusual, and especially the location. First time you had a chance to be at that Opryland resort, and I guess it wasn't the most pleasant experience for a lot of people who saw the enormity of the building and the layout of it.
It was the most interesting place I've ever been, I think. The world of convention centers, I get to see it once a year at the MLB winter meetings because I know a lot of people see just what we do at the winter meetings, which is reports and transactions. Really, the winter meetings are also a massive trade show. It's for the business side of baseball. These things are huge, absolutely massive. The Opryland Resort Convention Center, I've never been somewhere that big. It's got to be a few thousand rooms. I was saying to you before we started, when the woman at the front started to draw a map for me to my room, I was worried. It's just a lot of time spent, number one, looking for my room, wondering where I was, and a lot of time spent just looking out over this abyss, or whatever you want to call it, and thinking, you know what, we're not meant to live like this as human beings. There were indoor rivers, there were boats running through it, there were palm trees,
everywhere.
Trees. It was from my balcony alone. I had a balcony looking out over the rivers and palm trees, all of which were fake, and I could see multiple photos with Santa locations throughout it. So it was a baseball industry mixed with family vacations, and boy, oh boy, I'm happy to be back in Toronto. Very happy to be back in Toronto.
I'm sure you are. The world's largest atrium.
Yes.
But we're certainly here to talk about the biggest news story of the year. The prize that every Jays fan had hoped would be the best Christmas present ever. It's not to be. Shohei Ohtani is a Los Angeles Dodger signing the richest contract in the history of not only baseball, but in the history of professional sports. Throughout the history of the Jays over the years, there's been plenty of heartbreak. How would you compare this Ohtani signing elsewhere in regards to disappointment in the history of the franchise and for the city of Toronto?
This is something we'll be talking about 10 years from now. This is something we might be talking about eventually during Shohei Ohtani's Hall of Fame induction. This is one that does not go away. You look at recent years, going back to even Darvish, some of these pursuits that the Blue Jays have been close on and haven't landed, those have tended to fade away. But Shohei Ohtani does not fade away. This is a guy that will haunt you forever, for as long as he is in Major League Baseball and probably well beyond. And what we're seeing really above everything in this pursuit is that beyond baseball, what Shohei Ohtani represented was hope in all of this. And it is hope that sells tickets. It is hope that excites fans. And when you lose hope, nothing hurts like that. Because when you dream on Shohei Ohtani, you're dreaming on the best player in the sport, the coolest player in the sport, the most beloved player internationally in the sport, could really come to Toronto. And then it didn't happen. Hopes were high. Hopes were extremely high, higher than I have ever seen. And on one hand, that is the absolute beauty of baseball. It's a bunch of people all at once just really caring about something and getting excited without worry, without checking yourself. That's the beauty of being a fan. You get to be a little unhinged in a healthy way. It's a good thing. And for that to build up to such an extent and then not happen, the Blue Jays are left with a really uncertain path forward where they need to, John, not just rebuild a roster, but they need to rebuild the hope of a fan base that's been pretty beaten up the last few years. 3 of the last 4 years, wild card series that went loss. 0-6 in those games.
Yes.
There was finally that hope. Man, tough for a fan base that is stuck with this team.
Yeah, it was so there was so much optimism. But question for you, do you believe the Jays were legitimately in this right to the end, or did Ohtani's agent simply do a great job of using the Jays as a stalking horse to get that Dodgers number up to $700 million, which Ohtani signed for?
I really do believe the Blue Jays were in this up to the end and very serious throughout. Now, the word serious can take on a lot of different definitions in baseball pursuits like this. In past years, we've seen a lot of times where the Blue Jays or other teams were serious, but didn't really get to those final stages, making a final offer, having visits, having the player visit Dunedin, the complex to tour that. The Blue Jays wanted Shohei Ohtani, period. They were all in. They wanted to go for him and build this next era of competitive baseball around him. The tough part of trying to live at this level of Major League Baseball is that you either get him or you don't. And in the coming days, you may be already, but certainly in the coming days, I think you will see a lot of revisionist history of it was always the Dodgers, the Blue Jays got used. Well, at a certain level, negotiations are just negotiations. Good agents are going to leverage teams, are going to leverage interest. That's how this happens. And when you are shopping at the top of the market, when you are sitting at the adults table in all of this, if you lose, you just lose. There's no more bronze medal to be happy about, like maybe 8-10 years ago. If the Blue Jays were close on a guy 10 years ago, fantastic. It's almost like they're getting invited to sit at that adults table, but they're there now. And when you miss a guy, you just plain miss him. And that's where the Blue Jays are right now. They were legitimately going after him. I believe legitimate finalists for him, but $700 million, the deferrals involved, what the Dodgers offer. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani wanted that. And the Blue Jays, it's nice to say they were close. It's nice to say they offered X and Y, but there are two groups of teams now, the Dodgers and everybody else.
Yeah, that's the way it really appears. Another thing that's been circulating, I know John Heyman had a column that came out that this was good for baseball, him going to the Dodgers rather than the Jays, and he's not a Canada hater or anything like that. But I mean, that stuff is starting to get out a little bit. Do you think the commissioner's office gave out a sigh of relief with him going to the Dodgers rather than Toronto? And for what reason? It continues
to amaze me that Toronto is painted in this light. I grew up in a rough small town. That's not Toronto. My goodness, this is a massive, gorgeous city that offers you everything you could want. If you're bored in Toronto, you're doing something wrong. It's your own fault. And when you even consider the size of the market in Toronto itself, also Canada, you're talking about 40 million people in Canada. That's about the size of California population-wise. It is such a unique market. Now, on one hand, I don't really believe this is as big a tipping point or selling point as it's often made out to be. The contract always wins. And then whoever pays you the most money, then all of a sudden Toronto or Cincinnati or Dallas, Texas is the most beautiful place you have ever been. The best place you've ever been is where it gives you the good contract. But when we see Toronto talked about in hindsight after these negotiations, it's good for baseball to have one of their biggest markets with one of their biggest stars. We're seeing how international this game is with what you see the following of Ohtani in Japan. I think the best example, John, is how media coverage works. When I'm on the road for a Blue Jays game, a lot of times it's just me and one or two other writers. If Ohtani had have signed in Toronto, that's 20, 25 writers, most of whom are working for Japanese outlets covering Ohtani every day. It's difficult for me to even wrap my head around the interest level and the level of fame that Shohei has. Probably why he wanted this to be so secretive. I don't know if that guy can even step out of his house most days. But when Toronto is spoken about like that, and listen, I'm a small town guy who came to Toronto and didn't like it for a while. That was more me than the city, but I know how it feels to come around on this city. It's a great place to live. Ball players who come here love it. Kevin Gossman just tweeted about that earlier today, standing up for Toronto. This is not a small northern village like some people rather lazily want to still believe or pretend they believe for the sake of the story.
Well, it's the third largest market in North America. I mean, it is. And every player that we've had on this program who are now playing for the Jays from elsewhere, everyone falls in love with the city. Everyone falls in love with everything the city offers. So to hear that, it would have been great for Shohei to land in Toronto if he was on that plane that everyone's talking about too, which we'll get to in a second. But so that when you hear that, even myself, who I'm a born and bred New Yorker, I've been living in Nashville for 20 years. But just looking at the city of Toronto and the fan base and the passion of the entire country for the Jays, this would have been amazing to have them there. You wrote a great column on MLB.com, and I really enjoyed it. And you really laid it out with extreme passion about what this would have meant to the city and to the Blue Jays. But now they have to pivot. Where do the Toronto Blue Jays go from here?
Man, the $1 million question now. And of course, this front office has backup plans and backup plans to those plans, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing is going to excite this fan base like Ohtani would, number one. At this point, what's going to get the fan base back and reinstill some of that hope is winning playoff games, period. Right now, this team is stuck in prove-it mode, I think. Even if they win 100 games, well, prove it. Win some playoff games. Go where you're supposed to go. Make a run at the division. For the Blue Jays, I think they can be flexible in terms of where they target positionally. That's at least a decent starting point. And if you are the Blue Jays, you almost need to try to forget that Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani ever happened. Let's just look at this class and call it a slightly below average free agent class and see if you can make the most of it, frankly, if you're the Blue Jays. Now, the easy pivots would be to someone like a Cody Bellinger, who has incredible upside and incredible risk. You can look down at a Matt Chapman, go a little lower to some Rhys Hoskins, JD Martinez types that make a lot of sense in the middle of this lineup. But in any of those situations, you're going to need a couple more pieces. And you're not just changing your team with an Ohtani or a Soto. You need to fit some pieces together. Now, the Blue Jays do have the advantage of having a lot of middle infield depth. You're talking about the Davis Schneiders, a lot of prospects below him. So those guys can handle a second or a third base if you spend elsewhere. But the Blue Jays could also go big in the pitching market. You could look at a Yamamoto and just try to win games by shutting people down. But I think the Blue Jays, more than anything, if there's one answer I can give to this, it's that they'll hit the trade market. And I think quite aggressively hit the trade market. Similar to what they did for Matt Chapman a couple of years back, finding a guy who is on a team that you may not need him or may not want to pay him, I think will be a big thing this offseason. There are some teams that are maybe not actively cutting money, but they sure aren't adding it. And if the Blue Jays can flex their financial muscle in the trade market, I think that's a strength of this front office. I know that today is not when people want to hear about strengths of this front office. I get it. But over the past few years, they've done a good job of using money in trades. I think they have laid a lot of groundwork on the trade market as a backup, and that is where they need to be aggressive because free agency doesn't offer a ton of high-end options beyond the Bellinger tier, and he's going to be pricey along with those next couple of names.
Yeah, and Bellinger, had a really good comeback season in his walk year. Did fabulous, and but he could be that option. I mean, that plan C, because plan A didn't happen. Plan B, which was Soto, he goes to the Yankees. He'll be a free agent most likely, and who knows what he's going to be asking for if he has a good season with the Yankees. So, I mean, there's so much here, and also building from within the organization. You mentioned that they have all of these young prospects that are emerging. Davis Schneider was certainly a great example of that when he came up. So do you think it's also another option to really now focus on building this team from within?
You need to do that more. And great teams have a Davis Schneider or a Davis Schneider type every year, every other year. It's been a while, if you cut out Bo and Vladdy, who are real cornerstones, it's been a while since we saw the Blue Jays steadily, over and over, produce position players for their roster who can complement this roster. And that is very important. Now, where they're at right now, beyond Davis Schneider, you have, looking down the list, you have Aurelvis Martinez, you have Addison Barger, Ernie Clement will get a shot, Damiano Palmaggiani is one to watch at third base as well. Then you have the Biggios, the Espinals. That's how you want to do it. You want to have 6 or 7, because 4 or 5 aren't going to work out. That's the way baseball works. So if you produce them in bulk and you have lots of options who can compete, that's the sweet spot. The Dodgers have done a good job of this over the years, just producing talent internally. And the beauty of that, number one, is that you get good players. The second beauty of that, if you really want to dehumanize it, is that you can get players who you're developing for cheaper. You are paying a guy $700K, $1 million, instead of having to go out into free agency and spend $8 million for a guy who's going to play part-time. That's what allows you to really boost the top end of your spending. And if the Blue Jays can do a better job of that, that's going to allow this to sustain itself, because they have nailed these big money free agents. Gosman, when you look at the Barrios extension that looks good again, Bassett, they're nailing that, especially on the pitching side. But eventually, you're going to get stuck with a bad contract or two, and you need to protect yourself with development. The Blue Jays still have a ways to go in that, but doing a bit better lately.
Yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. One other question when it comes to some existing players, now that all this money has been freed up since it's not going to Ohtani, there's a lot of talk. Well, maybe it's time to extend Bo or Vladdy. And with the season that Vladdy had, it was underperforming somewhat. What do you think the Jays should do there? Should you go out and kind of appease the fan base by extending these two foundations of the organization, or do you kind of wait it out a little bit more to see where they head and how they perform in 2024?
When you're looking at both, I think they might be slightly different cases when I look at them, because I feel like I know who Bo Bichette is. Every day, every season, I think you can project him within a tighter window, if that makes sense. Vladdy, it's tough. How much are you paying for 2021 when he almost beat Shohei for that MVP? And how much are you paying for a guy who is going to OPS in the low 800s and tantalize you with power, but maybe only have one or two of those peak seasons? That's the same argument that would be coming from Vladdy's side. And his reps and his agents, they'll be saying, hey, this guy's young. You're going to be getting those peak seasons. He still is 2021 version of himself. It's a tough middle ground to find. And I feel like finding that middle ground with Bo Bichette is a little easier to just locate at the very least. Now, that being said, very broadly speaking, the closer you get to free agency, the harder these deals are. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of them happen very early for players, but not really in this middle or second third of their arbitration control. Because if you are Bo Bichette, if you are Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's difficult to understand how attractive this must be for those young men. And it's something that I try to wrap my head around more, and I try to do a better job of, because it's easy for me to say, sure, throw money at them, but they'll have a chance to be the guy on the free agent market. They're going to watch Juan Soto on that free agent market next year and say, yes, please. I want to be that guy. With instead of one team negotiating against me and the potential future, we've got 10 teams. We've got 20 teams. You see what can happen with Shohei Ohtani late in these processes where millions and millions and millions get added on. I think the open market is so attractive to those guys. And while it would make sense for the Blue Jays to lock one up and say to fans, hey, this isn't just a rush for the next 2 years. We're going to do this long term for good. If you're Bo and Vladdy, they had better be offering you a ridiculous contract for you to give up the opportunity to be the big dog on the free agent market, because every single year these contracts are going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, they certainly are. Look what happened with Ohtani and Soto. It just is insane the amount of money that's being spent on these agents, these free agents, and of course, all these young guys are saying we can't wait till we get there. So, that's a good point to bring up. I want to just circle back again to the winter meetings, the frenzy that swirled around Ohtani, the bizarre nature of keeping silent, not keeping silent. I mean, you were in the middle of it somewhat down in Nashville because of the press conference that was supposed to be with Ross, and then all of a sudden he's not there. They reschedule it to a Zoom. Kind of talk to us about how this week unfolded, how bizarre it was, the media frenzy, the social media stuff, the post that there's a private plane going from Anaheim to Toronto. I mean, I've been watching and being a fan and a reporter for the game, certainly not as long as you, but I've never seen anything like it. Please describe what it was like to be where you are following all this insanity.
I don't think I'll ever cover something that strange again, and part of me hopes I don't. It was a very, very revealing, I guess is the right word, week. Now, it began back on day one of those winter meetings in Nashville on the Monday. We were supposed to meet with Ross Atkins in person like it always happens at, I believe, 4:30 local time. And an hour, maybe hour 15 before, we get an email from the Blue Jays baseball media department who we work with saying that this is going to happen on Zoom now. There's been a scheduling conflict. And obviously, your mind jumps to Ross Atkins is in L.A. or Dunedin, wherever Shohei Ohtani is right now. And I'm lucky I had my notepad up on the screen here. So my first question to Ross was, where are you? Which is a wild question to be asking someone on a Zoom. Now, I have things behind me. I have frames on the wall, chairs. There are little clues you might glean from this that I'm in my apartment. His was a blank white wall, a black suit, a white shirt. Above him, there were two lights coming down. You were even looking, and this is where my mind was. I was even looking, is the sun coming in? Because you can see on me right now, the sun is coming in on this side of my face. Maybe I would be able to see something and glean, oh, he's not on this coast of the country. He's on the other coast where the sun is rising or setting. That's how ridiculous this was right out of the gates. Not ridiculous in a way that it shouldn't have happened that way, but just the bizarre nature of it, which I kind of enjoyed. It was a wild story as it happened. But his answer here that he gave me, I said, Ross, are you with us here in Nashville or has business taken you elsewhere? And he said, due to scheduling conflicts, I was able to be on this Zoom call, and I'm grateful for your adjustment to be here with me today. I wanted to make sure that I was with you, and Zoom permitted that. A masterclass of saying nothing. And throughout this process, Ross Atkins and the Blue Jays fully adhered to Ohtani's wishes that nothing be said. Now, sure, it's easy for me to get upset at that because my job relies on people saying things, but I also respect how this game works. And if that's what Ohtani wanted, Ross Atkins and the Blue Jays sure did it. They said nothing at all. It's one of our colleagues from Japanese media, I believe, asked John Schneider right off the top of his media availability, were you at the meeting? You look tanned. And Schneider just laughed back at him and said, I live in Florida. Some of these amazing moments that, because of how bizarre this whole situation was, these great little moments that I'll never forget. I will never forget that white wall behind Ross Atkins, or some of those media scrums where everyone was starting to understand what was happening, but nobody could say it out loud. Then we get to Friday or Saturday, whichever the airplane day was, which I will always remember. And going through that day, of course, the flight tracker starts. Shades of Kawhi Leonard when he was in Toronto. You see people digging up, well, here's a picture of Shohei on Instagram. It's the same airplane. It's from near where he lives. Last week, this plane flew here. And there are two sides of this. There are a fan side and a media side. On the fan side, this was one of the only good days I remember on Twitter. For fans to have something to collectively go crazy about, that's as good as it gets. And you saw the passion of people chasing this down. You saw thousands of people who clearly were getting no work done that day whatsoever. And that's when baseball is at its best. And that's when you see even a shade of what the NBA generates. I think the NBA is such a great league when it comes to player movement and transactions and also a little bit of drama. Baseball can use a little bit more drama like this that sucks people in. And you saw fans get sucked in, which is great. That's their job. That's what they're great at. Now, on the media side of this, it was much different. And I think it's important not to overlap those. It's a fan's job to get excited as hell. It's my job to get things right. And not everything was done right from a media standpoint. There was, going through the week, I did find it very interesting in terms of how much information or preferences of Ohtani were getting out there. As a guy who, his entire thing is silence, his entire thing is secrecy. Then earlier in the day, of course, there was the report from the blog in Los Angeles that Ohtani had made a decision. Now, that blog has since retracted that with a rather embarrassing apology. That's not even an apology. It read like a performance art piece. But that kickstarted a frenzy throughout the day. People are losing their minds. The great hope is coming true. Later in the day, it was reported that Ohtani was, in fact, on that flight by John Morosi in a tweet that he has since retracted, saying he got bad information on that. So the excitement continued to build and continue to build. And for fans, again, that's their job. Ride the lightning, enjoy those highs. They don't come around all that often. But the excitement, understandably, grew to an absolute frenzy. Then, Shohei's not on the plane. And instead of Shohei Ohtani, it is a Canadian businessman who was on Dragon's Den. I mean, this is...
Well, Shark Tank. It was a Shark Tank guy, wasn't it?
Shark Tank. There we go. I'm Canadianizing it. But it just... These incredible twists and rises and falls in all of this that show, number one, the importance of getting it right, because I'm a big believer it's a reporter's job to bat 1,000. Will that always happen? No. Should it always happen? I hope so. And also, it was a lesson in what those days can be like and what fan passion can look like in this game. When you get a little bit of drama, a little bit of investigative work, tracking flights, tracking Instagram pictures. It was amazing to watch play out, but it was messy. And a lot of that played into the incredibly high hopes that Blue Jays fans had. I'm sure some tickets sold in that time. I am sure some people placed bets on things that were going to happen. There's real emotions, real dollars involved in a lot of this. And then at the end of all of it, the very next day, who breaks the news? Shohei Ohtani. For him to do that himself and for his agent to break the numbers involved, amazing. It's hard to do that. It's very hard to do that. You almost never see it. But in the end, his whole thing is that we don't know anything about him. He won't even reveal his dog's name. And in the end, he is the guy in charge of the story. He broke the story despite all of the mess that had happened before it.
Certainly an amazing week, an amazing journey. It wasn't the result that Jays fans or the city of Toronto wanted, but it was incredible to watch it unfold the way it did. And we can only look forward to what the Jays are going to do in 2024 to get this fan base excited. And hopefully there'll be some moves upcoming. Before we let you go, I want to remind everybody you're listening to The Gibby Show, presented by our friends at Miller Lite. This holiday season, when you're heading out to a party or enjoying friends and family at your home, don't forget to include the Miller Lite into those festivities. They have been the official sponsor of The Gibby Show, and I know Gibby will be cracking open his favorite beer this holiday season. After all, anytime is Miller time. The light beer that tastes like a real beer, Miller Lite, the official sponsor of Major League Baseball, and right here on The Gibby Show.
Corner booths, sticky floors, weekdays that feel like weekends. You never forget the way some things taste. Miller Lite, great taste, 90 calories. Tastes like Miller time.
But before, Keegan, we let you go, you last appeared on this show on November the 20th with myself and the namesake for this show, John Gibbons, Gibby himself. Later that week, Gibby was signed by the Mets to be their new bench coach. You had some fun with that on social media, saying that the Mets must have really enjoyed the interaction that you had with Gibby here.
You know what? It was either that or Gibby finished up talking to me, and he took a look around and said, you know what? I took a couple teams to the ALCS, and now I'm talking to this idiot. I better get back into the game. So I'm glad that the show has continued, number one. I'm glad that Devin Travis made it on the week after me. You guys had Steve Phillips. You've had some shows. I was very worried. My first worry was, oh, my God, I'm going to be the finale. And a finale needs to be grand and big. And I thought, I don't know if I live up to that billing. I might just live on as the finale for years and years. But I'm thrilled for Gibby, thrilled for him to be back with the team where it all started with him. Speaking with a couple of colleagues who cover the Mets, I told them, hey, you're going to have some fun. You are going to have some lightness and some good jokes, maybe some loving ribbings brought to your days. But baseball's a better place with Gibby back in a dugout. I don't know how many times he can get ejected as bench coach. We'll see, but it'll be a good time. It's very happy for him.
That'll be fun to watch. And, me and Gibby going back really since 1981 when we were roommates with the Shelby Mets. We've known each other for such a long time. Our other roommate was J.P. Ricciardi at the time back then. And it's a very incestuous game and, and people help others. And Phillips helped Gibby break in as a roving catching coach and gave him his first job as a minor league manager in the Mets system. So it's kind of full circle for Gibby. Everyone that I've spoke to think it's a great hire. But also a question for you is we see bench coaches across the major leagues. Do you think there'll come a time when Gibby perhaps gets another shot managing now that he's back in the majors and back in the public eye? Isn't it kind of a transition where bench coaches eventually somewhere maybe getting a chance to be a big league skipper again?
Definitely. I think it puts him back on that radar. If that's something that Gibby would look to do later on, beyond this season, then we see a lot of, let me choose my words carefully here, with veteran managers. I know that Gibby's not Bruce Bochy or Ron Washington's age just yet, but we're seeing a lot of veteran managers back in the game, and managers who are good managers of people. It's important to understand the analytics. That will never go away. But I think that baseball now is seeing the value of a manager or leaders in an organization or clubhouse who can manage people at the same time. It's hard to be able to manage numbers and people. And I think I alluded to this, John, when we were together last time, that what always impressed me thinking back about Gibby with the Blue Jays is how he managed personalities. Those 2015, 2016 teams, they had 10 guys, 10 players who would be the biggest personality on this current Blue Jays team. Managing that, knowing when to get off the tracks because a freight train is coming, or knowing when to say, hey, Josh Donaldson, come here, is an art. It is a difficult thing to learn, and it's something that a veteran like Gibby understands. So the game, I believe, is keeping space, or maybe even creating a bit more space for baseball people who understand those relationships, understand how to manage people in all of this, because every team's got numbers. Every team has 1 million people and 1 million computers with analytics. That's always going to be there. But I think that the human skills are what's going to separate a lot of people. And you know what? I would put Gibby on that list.
Yeah. Well, he certainly has endeared the fans across Canada, and everyone really loved the opportunity to see him week after week right here on the Gibby Show. And we do have a couple of shows left before we got to call it a day. Obviously, we're doing some best ofs. But for me personally, getting to know you and be able to speak to you, I certainly follow you on social media, on Twitter, read every one of your columns throughout the season. I was always like, when I'm prepping for a show, I go to your stuff first because you always were accurate, and it was just, your reporting is just impeccable, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to thank you for coming on the show again to talk about Ohtani and of course give us another insight into John Gibbons.
Absolutely, I appreciate that so much, John. This has been my pleasure. Always enjoy joining you guys, and if we ever do down the road, I'm always here.
Thank you so much, Keegan. We appreciate it. Now it's time for another Best of Gabbing with Gibby segment, brought to you by Tim Hortons. There's a new and fun lineup of giftable items for everyone on your holiday shopping list now, available at participating Tim Hortons restaurants across Canada. Give the gift of Tim's with a 3-pack of Tim's scented candles, an apple fritter, French vanilla cappuccino, and maple scents. You could pick up a snowy Tim Bits Night 500-piece puzzle, or the new limited edition Tim Hortons Winter Blend Fine Grind Coffee and Candy Cane Hot Chocolate Mix. Help a loved one add to their Tim's collection with the new versions of annual Tim Hortons holiday merchandise favorites, including the Tim's Holiday Snow Globe, ornament, ceramic mug, and stainless steel travel mug, or pick up some hot chocolate ornaments as a fun gift to include with your holiday cards. Tim Hortons holiday merchandise is available at participating Tim's restaurants in Canada while supplies last. Availability varies by restaurant. On today's special Best of Gabbing with Gibby, we will take a look back to that unforgettable 2015 team and season when Gibby and the Jays came so close to winning it all. From the swagger of that club to the bat flip heard round the world, those memories are discussed here with some of the members of that unforgettable team with the unforgettable style that is Gibby. Enjoy this Best of Gibby, focusing on the 2015 team. Devin Travis, you made the Jays in 2015 after a great spring training. I mean, being named the starting second baseman. Did Gibby break the news to you that you made the team? Tell us about how that unfolded.
Oh, yeah. I was realizing it was starting to get to the end. I was not even on the 40-man roster yet. And I knew I was having a pretty good spring training. I got off to a terrible start, by the way. I remember thinking, I think I was 0 for 10, 0 for 12, and we were in Clearwater, and I got an 0-2 breaking ball right down the middle and hit a ground ball up the middle, and Tim Leeper pinched me and said, "Don't stop now." And I still credit Leeper. I'm like, Leap, I'm not kidding you. You're the only person that kept me going every day, because I was looking around thinking, man, Gibby thinks I stink. Jose Reyes thinks I stink. Everybody thinks I stink. I can't even hit the dang ball forward. So, yeah, it was the crazy start, and then I kind of just blacked out the rest of spring training. I was sitting at my locker. DeMarlo Hale came and grabbed me, I believe, and said, "Hey, Gibby wants to talk to you." Well, I've read plenty of stories on social media and heard stories on ESPN that this is normally the time where you figure out if you're making the team or not. So I walk in, it's Alex Anthopoulos, Gibby leaning back in his chair, all comfortable. My heart, I can't even damn talk. It's beating so damn fast. And then DeMarlo's in the corner. And I'm trying to look and get a read like, okay, someone smile, give me something, nothing yet. And then, bam, Gibby goes, "All right, Dan, well, you had a great spring training. Told you coming in, we're going to give you every chance to win the job. And, yeah, just wanted to tell you, congratulations, buddy. You made the team." And I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know if I cried. I don't know if I screamed. I don't know if I went and hugged him. Yeah, it was the best day. That was the best day of my life, because, you wait your entire life to make your dream come true. And yeah, man, when Gibby told me those words, I just remember going to call my mom and dad. I know I cried on that phone call, and it was a special day.
Jerry Howarth.
Alex Anthopoulos, Canadian, born in Montreal, came to the Blue Jays after working for the Expos, and put together a wonderful 2015 season, which you were a part of, and people coming, and the bat flip home run by Jose Bautista. And it was the beginning of what was going to be a wonderful era here with Alex as the general manager. But for whatever reason, and I won't go into specifics, the Rogers people brought in Mark Shapiro and later Ross Atkins. And much to Alex's credit, because he saw that leadership and decision-making come to an end abruptly without him even knowing about it, he said, "No, thank you," turned down $10 million, 5 years, $2 million a year. And I really respected that, because he wanted to have the authority that he had to take the team at 2015 at the July trade deadline to bring in Troy Tulowitzki and David Price and so many others to make that team viable, and just missing going to the World Series. Well, and I just thought there in Kansas City, the Blue Jays were on their way to beating the New York Mets and winning another World Series under your leadership, but especially Alex's leadership.
Justin Smoke.
Hey, you got some good memories for those 15 and 16 teams, man. It was a unique bunch, wasn't it? I know if the fans have heard all about it, a lot of them, but it was a good mix of guys. We had some guys. We had some.
It was. I tell people all the time, those 15 and 16 teams, I felt like every day we went on the field, we thought we were going to fight, right? I mean, you thought we were going to. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like we were trying to fight it, but people hated us. People didn't like us. And I think it's because we had, first of all, we had really good players. They knew we were good, but, guys carried themselves like, "Hey, we're going to kick your butt." And I couldn't remember if it was 50. I think it was the 15 team. How many times were we down by 6 or 7 runs in the third inning and we come back and win 12-10? Like, it was something, it was the craziest thing I ever been a part of. I mean, our starter would go out there and give it up, be down 7 in the first. The next thing you know, we end up winning the game. And so, we had a good group of guys that just didn't care and just went out there and played hard. And, it doesn't matter what the score is. We're going to play till the end. And that's kind of what we did.
Hey, you remember though, remember our defense was shaky that year, right? We had Reyes was played short, and God bless him, but he was getting older, right? He lost his range, and then we were playing Valencia and Colabello in the outfield, right? And they weren't outfielders, right? Balls dropping in. But we would outslug everybody. We'd have to score 10 runs some nights to win, right? But that's hard to do. But then when the big day of the trades, Tulowitzki came in. I think that was the key. Tulo, you were out there on the field with him. Tulo cleaned up that infield. Ben Revere cleaned up that left field. Because you can hit all you want. You know what? If you don't play defense in any sport, you're not going to win anything.
Especially in that, the playoff time of year. I mean, it all comes down to pitching and defense anyway. I mean, because those games aren't going to be 8-1, 8-5, or 8-6. I mean, they're going to be close games, and you got to be able to do that.
Marco Estrada, you had two fabulous back-to-back games where you took no hitters into the eighth inning. One against the Orioles, and your very next start, you took a perfect game into the eighth, broken up by a weak little infield single. And a two-part question here about 2015. What do you remember about those two heartbreaking games, first of all? And how special was it to be part of that 2015 Toronto Blue Jays squad?
So the two, 7-inning no-hitters or whatever it was, the first one, no joke, all I thought to myself the entire time was, how am I doing this right now? I am all over the place. I'm not locating anything. I got away with a lot of stuff that day. I think I ended up throwing 128 pitches, which was probably the most in my career.
No way. That's two starts nowadays. Sorry.
But I mean, you have a no-hitter going, and I know there's no chance in hell you guys would have taken me out, regardless of what the pitch count was. And I would have told you the same. I'm not coming out. I don't care if I throw 200 pitches. I'm getting this done. But as soon as that hit was done, you came out, I think before the ball even landed. But that game, I was all over the place. So I was just, I don't know. It was luck. It was more luck than anything, I think, or just right pitch at the right time, because I don't remember locating very well. Now, the Tampa game, that game, I was locating. Felt right. Everything felt good. And I thought I was going to do it. And, people try not to think about it. I knew what was going on. And still, the hit I gave up it's not like it was frush, which I wish it would have been. Luckily, it was justified later. I think Kiermaier came up and hit a rocket up the middle or something, line drive to center. So it was justified, and it was a great game. The defense was incredible. Obviously, Donaldson made that one play, and he almost made that one ground ball play also. But I think it was Forsythe that beat it out. The defense was incredible. Navarro called a great game, as he always did. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then what was the second question?
It was just, how special was it to be part of that 2015 squad? What a special year.
Obviously, it was very special. I think to this day, it was one of the best teams put together. You know what? That team helped me out a lot. They helped me out mentally because it wasn't like that in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, most veterans were – it's almost like they ganged up on you. And maybe because I was a rookie and, I just kind of kept to myself. But it felt like it wasn't the same. With Toronto, guys wanted to make you feel better. They boosted your confidence every single day. And I think that's what changed my career. And it's not like I did bad with Milwaukee. I pitched really well, but the confidence wasn't quite there. I didn't really believe in myself like I did in Toronto. And those guys did that for me.
It was kind of an odd bunch, so wasn't it, Marco? Man, it was a good.
It sure was. It was completely different. Everybody was about flair and style and whatnot. The showboating, which I didn't showboat. I didn't like it. But,
no.
You know what? If it made the guys mentally stronger, go ahead and do it. Showboat, do whatever you have to do to make you a better baseball player, because I wanted to win. So it was a lot of fun.
Personalities, man. Oh, that was a lot of fun, man. You were such a big part of that.
Josh Donaldson.
Toronto at that time hadn't, from the baseball side, experienced a winner in so long that if they were just hoping that you came in and played well and you could help win some ball games. And then once really the All-Star break in 15, we were hovering around 500, and then we were able to get David Price, Troy Tulowitzki, and add some key pieces to the bullpen. Ben Revere also was, important for our team. The fans just once we made those trades, it was a sellout every night, and the energy and the atmosphere was absolutely electric.
I want to take you back to 2015. You had 2 huge wins in the postseason, holding Texas to 1 run in that potential elimination game for the Jays, keeping the season alive. And then once again in the ALCS, your performance against the Royals in Game 5, 7-1. You faced the minimum number of batters through 6 2/3. That was the longest streak for an AL starting pitcher in the postseason since Don Larson's perfect game in 1956. You only allowed the 1 run. It was a homer to Salvador Perez with 2 outs in the 8th. And this is a question for both you, Marco, and for Gibby. How badly did you want to finish that game? And Gibby, how hard of a decision was it to take Marco out after that gem of a performance?
Yeah, it was obviously you always want to finish. And if it were up to me, I would have finished the game. But I do understand that there's, the pitch count and everything. But I think I remember them saying, listen, we actually wanted to pull you out because you deserve some sort of acknowledgement for what you did today. And obviously I really appreciate that because it's top 3 loudest stadiums I've ever heard in my life when I walked off that field. And obviously the Batista bat flip, that was probably the loudest I've ever heard any stadium. But when I walked off that field, how loud it was, it just made you appreciate that move, to give me that acknowledgement. I'm very thankful for that because I could have easily finished the inning. There wouldn't have been any clap. Obviously, you're walking off the field and you get some claps or whatnot, but no one knows if I'm going back out or not. So the ovation's just not the same. So it was nice to be able to walk off the field, get the ovation and the appreciation. I really appreciate that.
Hey, I remember you said to me, hey, let me finish this. And I said, well, now, hey, go tip your hat, brother. But
yeah, I did. But there was a game, and I'm sure we're going to get into that one, was the Texas one. That one, I tried hard. I tried hard not to come off that field because we were on the road. So I don't care about any ovations or anything on the road. And I wanted to finish that game. I mean, it was the 9th inning. I needed 2 more outs. And I don't know if you saw me, but as you're coming out to get me, I'm yelling at you I got this. Like, get out of here, Gibby. It's my game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That
one. What's that?
Well, hey, that's a think about it. We dropped the first 2 to Texas at home. It's best,
right.
Best, it's 3 out of 5.
Right.
And we never, I had never lost confidence. We knew you were pitching, and our guys on our team, you know what? Hey, we thought we could win, right? So we go down there, but we had the perfect guy on the mound down there, right? And yeah, you threw a gem to keep the season alive,
Jose Batista
in 2015, a couple big acquisitions at the trade deadline, and team just caught fire, right? And we go on, we get into the playoffs. All right, we go down. Everybody knows the story. I'm 100 times, right? We get down 0-2. You guys didn't panic. You never panicked, right? We tie it up down in Texas. We go back to the game. One of the most going to be most remembered games in baseball history, right? Okay, and this isn't where you made your name, but this is when you kind of solidified who you were. The big home run. We're down that 7th inning. You know what? Give us a quick synopsis on that again, brother. I know you've said it 100 times.
No, I know, but it's still exciting to talk about, right? So, like you said, we were down 0-2 at home. We lost the first 2 games at home. Went down to Texas and beat them, without home field advantage twice. So we tied it. And if it was a 5-game series, come back home to Toronto. And that game was crazy to begin with, obviously good pitching, good defense, no runs scored till later. But then Russell threw the ball back. It hit the bat, and there was somebody at third. They ended up scoring. So we felt like, that was kind of a weird way for us to lose the lead, per se. And then in that 7th inning, just stuff started going our way, with the 3 errors from their infielders on some bunts and a routine ground ball, setting up the stage for them playing the infield with no outs, which was weird. I think it was no outs or 1 out. And then Donaldson gets jammed and hits a little blooper that would have been probably an easy pop up to second base. And then that set up the stage for the count, which I don't know if you remember, but we had played the Rangers a bunch of times that year in the regular season, and Sam Dyson, the guy was nasty, right? Yes, but he only had one pitch, really. So it was just a matter of do or die with him. You knew he was going to throw you the sinker. He threw it like 97% of the time. It was a matter of location and just seeing him up. His ball ran a lot and he threw hard, so it was hard to get one of those ones that you can actually drive because they stayed up, because he was really good at aiming down below the strike zone. And he threw two in the dirt. I was able to see those good out of the hand. Then he threw one a little higher. I hit it off my foot. And then I was just like, you don't have to swing as hard. He throws hard. As long as that ball starts a little higher, all you got to do is make contact. I was trying to do was hit a fly ball to get the guy in from third. One thing I did not want to do was hit a ground ball for a double play. And sure enough, he threw it a little higher. I just kind of was quick to get the bat head out. I know that it looks like maybe a big swing, but in my head, I took a super short swing just straight to the ball, and I just flushed it. When you flush a ball and you have a good finish,
No, sorry, I don't. Go ahead.
We take 10 million swings in a year, so when you just have that feeling, it's like takes over. You just have that high finish, and it just feels like you swung through butter, right? You don't feel even the impact. I knew that I got it at that point, and that was a feeling that is hard to replicate. And the stadium was going nuts. It felt like the earth was shaking, and I kind of blacked out there for a minute because I don't remember running the bases. The only thing that I remember is coming back and sitting in the dugout and somebody giving me a cup of water, and it was a crazy couple of minutes there for a second.
Hose, that goes down in baseball history as one of the most dramatic home runs ever hit, right? There's you got some Bobby Thompsons, you got Joe Carter's walking off the World Series, right? But there's just something different about this one. And you know what? I tell people this all the time. You could have had anybody else hit that home run, right? Star player, average player, right? It would not have been the same. It just would not have been, because you are the face of the franchise. You've been there through the lean times, right? You were making your mark in the game, tremendous years, but you had not enough supporting cast. And there's something, and you had that personality in the game. This was your team. You were an emotional player. It would not have been the same if anybody else ever played the game hit that. I truly believe that. And that's why, man, we're old man, you're going to have them grandkids sitting on your lap. You're going to flip that on and go, they're going to still play that forever.
Yeah, that's and it creates a memory, right? And that's the interaction between the fans and the sport. And that's ultimately why we do this. If you think about it, really, why do people want to watch sports? It's to create moments and memories like that one. So for me to be even the guy, like you said, to be stepping up to the plate in that situation, I was lucky enough. And to make something like that happen is really rare. So I definitely understand the fortune that I had of being that guy.
Yeah, you came through. Hey, okay, then we move on. To we close out the Rangers. We play the Kansas City Royals. You had a tremendous postseason. We get down to, my only regret, we didn't win it that year. I thought that was the team to do it, right? But that's baseball. They had a good club, different type club, but they were really good. But that game 6. Hey, you tried to single-handedly win that sucker, hitting the 2 home runs. You hit the home run to tie. I mean, sometimes that, when you hit that big home run against Texas, a lot of that stuff gets lost in memory. And for a first time I think that was your first playoffs, right? In that year, 15.
Yeah, first time ever.
I mean, you stepped to the plate. And a lot of guys, that's hard to do. A lot of guys have trouble with that in the postseason.
Yeah, and I remember, sometimes that's what's good and cool, but also heartbreaking about baseball. Sometimes the breaks go your way and it's pure bliss, right? But sometimes the breaks go against you and it kind of sucks. I remember somebody hitting a home run on their team and a fan leaning over, in right center. And I thought for sure with the review that was going to get called back, and it didn't. I remember, the miscommunication between Ryan Goins and myself on a pop-up that opened up a big inning for the Royals. So it was bittersweet, that postseason, for sure. But I agree with you. I felt like that year we had a pretty good chance, and I was like the one that slipped away.
Yeah, but you know what? It still is some kind of year, man, and
That's
to
right.
be a part of that with you guys, and it was a special group.
That wraps up this special Gabbing with Gibby. Next week, we'll feature more best of segments highlighting some great guests and memories of the Gibby Show. Now inspired by our friends at Miller Lite, it's time for this week's Roast and Toast. The city of Toronto, the fans of the Blue Jays, and all baseball fans in Canada were ecstatic when a report surfaced this past Friday on X, formerly known as Twitter, by a baseball media representative that simply read, Shohei Ohtani is en route to Toronto today. That post caught fire, and there were rumors that Ohtani was on a private plane leaving Anaheim Airport on its way to Toronto with Ohtani on board. While it was true that a private plane did in fact leave from Anaheim for Toronto, Shohei Ohtani was not a passenger. The passenger on this private plane turned out to be one of the stars of the American TV show Shark Tank, Robert Herjavec. That social media post gave everybody false hope that Ohtani was on his way to Toronto to sign with the Jays. And of course, we all now know that was not to be the case. The person who did report on that was MLB Network's John Arezzi, and Arezzi then had to post a retraction. They got over 9 million impressions on X, saying, quote, today I did some reporting that included inaccurate information that Shohei Ohtani was traveling to Toronto. I regret the mistake and apologize to baseball fans everywhere. I am deeply sorry for letting you down. Well, for getting everybody's hopes up in Toronto, in the country of Canada, we have to give this week's roast, and that's got to go out to John Arezzi of MLB Network. Mistakes happen, of course, but this one got an entire country excited, and we got to give Arezzi the roast. This week's toast will be a little unusual. It's going to go to the team of people that helped bring this show to you for this entire season. As we near the final episodes of The Gibby Show, just 2 weeks remaining now, we would not be here without them. They have been the official beer of this podcast, the official beer of Major League Baseball. So inspired by our friends at Miller Lite, this week's toast goes out to the light beer that we've been proud to be associated with all season long. We want to thank and toast our friends over at Miller Lite.
Corner booths, sticky floors, weekdays that feel like weekends. You never forget the way some things taste. Miller Lite, great taste, 90 calories. Tastes like Miller time.
And that will wrap up this edition of The Gibby Show. I want to thank our executive producer for the show, doing an incredible job week after week, Mark Milliere, and thanks to our creative director, Chris Sabunia. You can find me on Twitter or X and Instagram, simply at John Arezzi. And if you're a fan of pro wrestling, you could check out my two other podcasts, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight and Matt Memories from Madison Square Garden, available everywhere you listen to your favorite podcast or on YouTube. And I do want to give a quick plug out to my book, Matt Memories, My Wild Life in Pro Wrestling, Country Music, and with the Mets, available everywhere. Gibby himself wrote one of the forwards to the book, along with wrestling legend Mick Foley. And, of course, the number one best-selling book right now in Canada when it comes to baseball, Gibby, Tales of a Baseball Lifer, is also available as well. It would be a great Christmas present for someone in your family or one of your friends. For John Gibbons, this is John Arezzi. Remember, we'll be back next week. Just 2 shows remain before it's all over. You won't want to miss them. As always, thank you for listening or watching on YouTube, The Gibby Show.